Welcome to Healthcare Connector, a podcast for amplifying the voices of women and people of color in healthcare.
Hi, y'all. Welcome to the Healthcare Connector. It is episode number 1. And what better way for us to get started than by putting myself in the hot seat? I'm someone in healthcare, ordinary person doing extraordinary things. So I brought in my head of marketing, Tasha Witherspoon, to put me in the hot seat. So I'm going to turn it over to her so she can get to doing the interview.
Hi there, Deann. How are you?
I'm doing good. Excited.
All right. You know, I love putting people in the hot seat. So let's kick off this inaugural Healthcare Connector. And my first question is, tell us what you're most proud of in your business or your career.
So what I'm most proud of in my career, I think it would be starting this business. You know, I never thought that I would be an entrepreneur. My goal was to end up being like VP in some healthcare corporation. And so that's what I thought I would be, work my way up the corporate ladder. And I'm very risk averse. So like it took me a lot to kind of step out on faith. So I'm just really proud of myself for taking the initiative and just putting myself out there and starting this business. I never thought it was going to be this good, or we were going to do this well, but here we are almost 2 years and still going strong.
So you talked about your corporate experience. Let's start from the beginning. So when did you know that you wanted to enter into the healthcare arena? Like, was that something that occurred to you as a child or in high school or college? Like, tell us, like, when did you say, I know I want to work in healthcare, and like, why?
Yeah, so I always wanted to be in healthcare. I mean, if you were to ask my parents from the time I was a very little girl, I just always wanted to be in healthcare, but I specifically at that point wanted to be a doctor. I thought that healthcare was just doctor and nurses. So I didn't have any idea of all the other things that you can do. Okay. I just knew I wanted to help people. I was never afraid of like blood. Like I've always loved watching like the medical TV shows and was really good at science. And so I knew I wanted to be in healthcare. And so actually when I went to college, I went thinking I was going to be pre-med, and then things changed and I found out there's a lot more to healthcare.
What was that change like? Were you exposed to other aspects of healthcare, or what was that like? And kind of tell us like where you went to school and how all that happened.
Yeah, so I went to East Carolina University that has a really good med school and good pre-med program. So again, thinking I was going to be pre-med, and I did not transition well to college life. I was a country girl that left a school of like 90 people in the graduation class and went to this campus where there was over 10,000 people. So did not adjust well and did not do good in school. And I had a counselor tell me, you are not going to get in medical school. And that kind of crushed me. Okay. At the point. But sometimes, you know, you learn more about yourself when you go through the obstacles. And so I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. I knew I was staying in school. I wasn't going to go home. And I actually had I was sitting in a health class, and they had a guest speaker. And the guest speaker was someone from the Student Health Center. And she came and talked about health education, community health, public health. And so that's when I was like, oh, wow, like this will take the stuff I love about health and then what I also like about public speaking and teaching and kind of put it all together. So I enrolled in that track, and like crazy thing is when I enrolled in that program, all my grades changed, like my whole entire like life on campus and everything changes. Like I finally found where I was supposed to be within healthcare.
What do you think it is that drew you to healthcare? Like you mentioned, you know, you were never afraid of blood. Oh my God, that was never me. Like what was it that said, I know I need to do something tied to health? Like what was it?
So when I was little, I think it was just like a fascination of like all things health. And I just had this real like natural science was natural to me. So going towards that science role was definitely something that I thought I was going to do. The community health, public health, and education part of it, I think when I was in college, my dad was diagnosed with colon cancer. And there was a lot of things that we didn't know about cancer. And like it come to find out like colon cancer was common in my family and we just weren't educated about it. And I learned how public health uses education to, improve the health of the community. And so that is when I decided, okay, we've got to educate our community, the community of people of color, women, about how we can take care of ourselves, how we can take preventive measures. And that's, what it's the saying, they say like an ounce of prevention is it's worth so much more than like going to the doctor.
Right.
And so that's, where I made up my mind that I wanted to be on this public health side. And I think, like I said, other than my natural ability, my dad getting diagnosed with cancer and just knowing how education, maybe if we would have been educated, we could have caught it earlier. Maybe that would have changed things.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that, Deann. So you realized you wanted to go into this community health, public health arena, graduated from East Carolina, and what was your first job out of ECU?
So listen, I went to ECU, I got an undergrad degree, I went on, I got a master's, and like, I don't know what I thought I was going to come out of school and get this really like high paying, high visibility job. Right. And that was not the case. And my dad had a conversation with me and he was like, sometimes you got to do what you got to do, in order to get to what you want to do. Sure. And so, at this time we were still using newspapers to find jobs. And I, looked at a newspaper and I saw an ad for Planned Parenthood. And they needed a community health educator, and they were specifically looking for someone who had experience in building peer education programs and teen programs. And so I applied. I did not know how amazing that job would be at that time. I was just trying to find my first job, but that changed a lot.
And what did that change for you? Because Planned Parenthood is such a respected, health organization that's been around for a while. But what was that experience like for you?
Yeah, so it gave me a lot of experience in building programs from the ground up. So I on ECU's campus, it was like the programs were already there. But at Planned Parenthood, they literally said, here's how much money you have. Go out and build a teen peer education program for us. And so I did that, and it actually ended up becoming very successful. They replicated it across their affiliate. It grew. None of the teens in the program ended up being teen parents. So the premise behind the program was that we educated them on reproductive health, but also character development. So we had like a great bunch of teens that came through that program. I also got a lot of visibility. So it was the first time that I was interacting with government officials, other organizations. And so I really got to hone my craft in that job. And it had a great mission.
That's an awesome way to start your career. So how long were you with Planned Parenthood?
I was with them for about 2 years before I don't want to say before I realized, but it's hard to, like I said, I always knew I wanted to be in corporate and I was going to climb this corporate ladder. There's not really a corporate ladder to climb when you're in nonprofit, when you're in a lot of nonprofits. You usually stay in the same position. And I'm very competitive, very goal oriented. And so that wasn't working for me. So that's why I decided to leave. But I stayed there for 2 years, and then I actually left them and went to another nonprofit.
Okay.
But I only was at that nonprofit for about 9 months.
Okay.
So that was my stint in the nonprofit arena.
Okay. That was also tied to public health or community health?
Yeah, so I went again. So it was the American Cancer Society, and so I always had this passion for cancer research. Going back to my dad, and so I tried my hands at doing cancer education, and I actually covered a 3-county region in North Carolina, helping them build out educational programs there. But it just wasn't. It wasn't a good fit.
Okay. But 2 great organizations to start your career in healthcare, and then that led to, what was your next move?
That led to Humana Insurance. So that is where I had the bulk of my career. I was actually there right up under 12 years.
Okay.
I learned a lot there. So that was the corporate job that I thought I would have forever and work my way up to VP. Love working there. I worked in a variety of different roles. I started out as a community health educator, and then I moved into care management. I worked telephonically, and I would go into people's homes and do assessments with them. And then I was really good at that. So they asked me to move over to learning and development. And so that's where I started getting all of this training experience that I have and what I say is my expertise. So they moved me into learning and development. And once they moved me into that department, I worked a lot of different roles. So everything that you can think of within learning for a healthcare organization, whether it was building the learning, designing it, leading the classes, knowing the systems behind it. I did a little bit of everything in learning and development while I was there.
So you said, you had a great 12 years is a good ride with any organization these days in corporate America. So what were you say were some of your biggest lessons learned during those 12 years? And then kind of what led you to make your next step after you left Humana?
So what were some of the things I learned? I learned sometimes you have to try new things. So like I said, every move that I made at Humana wasn't always a promotion. Sometimes it was a lateral move. And I learned very quickly there that those lateral moves can be just as important as climbing the ladder. Just getting that experience, getting that exposure to other departments and things like that is just as important. So that was one lesson I learned. I also learned there the importance of having not only a mentor, but a sponsor. So this kind of goes into why I left there as well. It was very hard to move up at Humana, and I'll just say this, at any corporate organization.
Exactly.
It is very hard to move up if you don't know the right people. And so while I had mentors, the difference between a mentor and a sponsor is someone who is actively engaged in saying your name in the rooms that you are not in.
Right. Whereas
a mentor is someone that is just giving you the guidance. And so when I was towards the last 4 to 5 years that I was at the insurance company, I had a sponsor. And so that's when I saw my biggest jumps in my career, was once I got that sponsor. And so that's what I'll tell everybody now. If you're going to stay in corporate, which that is fine, some people really love it, make sure that you not only have a mentor, but you also have a sponsor.
That is critical in corporate America these days. And how did you secure that sponsor? And were you seeking, people who look like you, or were you open to whomever could serve as that mentor or sponsor? Because I know some people kind of lock themselves in with that.
Yeah, so my original sponsors there actually did not look, well, they were women, but they were not people of color. What happened is I was threatening to leave the organization. I was getting tired of not getting the role. There was one year where I literally applied for 25 different jobs
Whoa.
that I was overly qualified for. And by this time, I had used tuition reimbursement at the company to go back and get a master's in healthcare administration and master's in business administration. So I knew I was qualified for all these jobs and should definitely get them. I wasn't even getting an interview for them.
Right.
And so I was just about to say, I'm out of here. But there were a couple of people who did not want me to leave.
Okay.
And so they worked with me to figure out, so another, I wouldn't say the company taught me this, but the sponsors taught me how to position myself as an expert, how to draw up those proposals, how to, get the message to the right people, what that message needed to be, because we literally had to write out a proposal for a brand new role for me and why that team needed the role for me to stay. And it ended up getting approved and I stayed there 2 more years. But it was with the help of those sponsors who went to the VP and the president of that department. They took that proposal there and kept putting it in his face until, he listened.
Okay. That's a great experience to have. And so you did the 12 years at Humana. And then what came next in your healthcare career?
So I did the 12 years, but I kept, I knew there had to be more.
Right.
I know I'm smart. I know I'm an expert. I am confident in that sense. I know what I'm doing, but I was just having trouble moving up that ladder. And then I also didn't always feel valued
Right.
there. And so a lot of times I would go into rooms and I was the only person that looked like me.
Right.
I spent a lot of time in their employee resource groups and things like that. And
Right.
There was a lot of women, but not a lot of women of color. And as you move, and with every corporation, you'll see this, as you move up the ranks, you see less and less people of color.
Right.
And with that, there was also things there were reductions in force going on, layoffs going on, and it was really stressful. And so I said, okay, I know I deserve more, and so I'm going to put it out there. So I started applying for external roles. Another lesson that my sponsors told me is sometimes when the company that you're with isn't giving you what you need, you have to leave and then maybe you can come back.
That's true.
And that sometimes will even get your pay better as well.
Right.
So I started applying for external positions. There was a healthcare startup that was coming to North Carolina where I'm at this point. And I applied for their director level position, which was what I was trying to get to. Went through a very long, drawn out process and got the job. And so I said, I'm leaving. Those mentors also taught me how to negotiate a salary. And so I was able to negotiate a really good salary and benefits. And I went to go work at this healthcare startup. And so that was my first foray into working with early stage healthcare companies.
So it's a big difference working with a startup versus, these well-established nonprofits that you experienced early in your career, and then a strong healthcare insurance brand like Humana. So what was that startup experience like? Because there's no blueprint a lot of times with a startup.
No, and it's crazy. It takes a lot of persistence and grit. And now I work with startups all the time. And whenever people want to go and work with a startup, I always ask them about their mindset, because it is different when you're coming from corporate. In corporate, everything is sort of set up for you.
Right.
There's all the processes, all the policies, everything is there. You just got to follow the path and do your work. With startups, none of that is there. You are literally building it from the ground up. There's no processes around anything you need to do, which can be very exciting because that means you get to test your skill and see, do you really know what you say you know?
Exactly.
But it can also be, you can also pull your hair out sometimes because you're just where's the process? The other thing is that there's not a lot of red tape. So one of the things I learned in being in startup was there wasn't all these layers that you needed to go through to get your answer. There was usually, you're one step away from the CEO or from the director or whatever. And so you can get things done. I also credit working at startups with starting to gain this entrepreneurial spirit. Like everybody that I've met that works within startups are entrepreneurs, because they're all building something, and they all, like, you're seeing what building a business can look like.
Right.
One thing that I read recently was that the billionaires that are within healthcare aren't doctors or nurses; they're business people. And so you see that in startups. You'll see people with like the business administration, the healthcare administration backgrounds, and you'll see them build the business. And so that's where I got that entrepreneur spirit.
Okay. So you went to the startup, and that led to, what was your next step after the startup?
Oh yeah. So I went to the startup. I was there for a while. Just some things happened that were outside of the control of the startup, and ended up leaving, but I stayed on as sort of a consultant role, helping them get their learning and development up. And so in doing that, I saw what it could mean to be a consultant.
Okay.
I also saw what consultants got paid. And I said, okay, like, I can do this. And so instead of going to look for another job, I said, I am going to start my own business. I'm going to be in charge of myself. I know what my value is. I know what I know. I know what I can do.
Okay.
I know what my expertise is. I also know that there's this niche of companies out there that could really utilize what I know about learning and development and about working in startups. And so that's where Connected Consultants was officially born.
Okay, so tell us about Connected Consultants.
So I started Connected Consultants with the mission to amplify the voices of women and people of color in healthcare. And I thought the best way we could do that is through entrepreneurship. I say that mission over and over and over again, because everything that the company does comes back to that right there. Me spending so many years not feeling valued or like my voice was heard. I wanted to change that, not only for myself, but for others. And so that's what we do at Connected Consultants. We go out and secure consulting contracts. Our specialization is within healthcare. So I go out and look for consulting contracts for myself, but I also have friends who are interested in consulting. And so we look for contracts for them as well.
Okay.
This year, we started also looking into government contracts, and then we have individual level programs. So I have a coaching program where we help people who are within healthcare start their own consulting businesses as well. And so we have a suite of services that fall up under that as well.
So you've kind of done a little bit of everything between the nonprofit experience, the corporate experience, and now an entrepreneur. So what have you found most rewarding about being your own boss? I mean, being that boss chick and, leading your own company.
So I tell people that I have finally found the 3 F's, which are the flexibility, the funds, and the freedom. So number one, the flexibility. I worked 60 hours a week when I was in corporate. Like didn't think it was anything wrong with that. And so I missed out on things. My son would often come in and say, like, you work all the time. You're either at work or you're in school. I didn't have flexibility to like take the PTO when I needed. I was having to ask someone for that. I remember when I left my corporate job, I had 25 days of PTO.
Wow.
Like, that's crazy. Like, no one should have a bank of that big.
Right.
So now within my own company, I can make flexibility a priority. I don't miss anything with my kids. I don't miss anything with my family. We want to take vacation, we take vacation. We want to get away for the weekend, we get away from the weekend. If my mom needs me, I have an older parent, then I am right down there with her. So I love that I have the flexibility. The funds. I struggled for a long time the first half of my career. I was a single mom and trying to make ends meet. A lot of times it just wasn't there. Consulting can be very, very lucrative, especially with healthcare startups. They have the money. They have investors, and they're looking for you to solve a problem that they cannot solve internally.
Sure.
And so they're willing to pay for that. And so it has been lucrative. And then the freedom, just the freedom to live my life on my terms and what I believe is success. If I want to start a new program, if I want to end a program, Again, if I want to travel, if I want to have my kids at home with me while I work, whatever it is that my definition of freedom and success is, I have the ability to do that in having my own company. I don't got to ask anybody else for anything. Like, I'm the decision maker here. Like, that's the biggest difference.
What would you say to those women who may be like you? And I know during this COVID-19 pandemic, a lot of people are being very reflective and taking action really on where they're not satisfied in their careers. So Deann, you were talking about just how you made that leap into entrepreneurship. And there are so many people out there during this COVID-19 pandemic who are rethinking their careers and living out their passions, and really, I think, taking some time to be self-reflective about what works for them and their families. So what would your advice be to those women out there who may be on the fence about entrepreneurship? Like, what advice would you give them if someone is pondering, hey, do I want to be my own boss?
Start the business. Like, there is no reason for anyone not to start the business. We have to get out of our own way. A lot of times, one thing I struggle with is perfectionism and trying to make sure I have every T crossed, every I dotted. Just start the business. Just start the damn thing. And you can always fix it later. Register the business. There are tax write-offs that you get from having a business. Just start the business so that you can write the things off. Start the business while the idea is still just an idea. Like, you don't have to have all of your services figured out. You don't have to have your website completely done. Start the business. Like, a lot of times we get in our own way. And there are so many people now that I meet on Instagram or on Facebook or on LinkedIn who said, yeah, I had a goal. I made this goal that I was going to start the business in 2021. And here we are in October and they haven't done it yet. And my advice is start the business. Like, what is you are getting in your own way. You don't have to have all the pieces together. Just get out there and start it, because you're going to have to change. Like, that's another thing I've learned through entrepreneurship. What I thought was going to work didn't work. I have to keep changing it and keep iterating it, and we keep getting better. But if I was waiting for some specific sign or some moment or some business plan to be done, I would still be waiting, and I would have lost out on, multiple six figures by now.
So that's a good point, because I think we've all learned, the word that has been thrown around this whole pandemic is pivot. And you mentioned, you like the freedom of being an entrepreneur and being able to spend time with your children. So let's talk about that for a moment. There are so many working moms out there and they're trying to juggle it all. Like, how are you able to balance this successful business and raising your children? And we haven't even touched on the fact, maybe we should go back and talk about the fact that you're also a student. So tell us about what you're studying now and kind of how you made that decision to go back to pursue your doctoral degree.
Yeah, so I'm a professional student and I like to prove people wrong. And so, I do want the doctorate, but I just wish there was some way I could go back to that counselor's face and be like, you see, damn it, I am a doctor. You told me I would never be one, or I wouldn't. I didn't get into med school, but I am definitely a doctor. So, that's part of it. But I love school. I love learning. I love learning about the business of healthcare. I love being an expert in my craft. And so I knew I didn't want to be research focused. And so I decided to go back and get a doctorate of healthcare administration, which is more applied. And it ties in with my learning and development background. And so I went back in 2019. That's when I started the program. I'm in my last year now. I'm beginning on my research project, which is studying structural racism in healthcare. Specifically, I am trying to define the word structural racism and its domain so that I can build a training to for healthcare professionals. And so that is me monetizing that. That is me. I went back to school to get more education, but I am also making that a part of my business as well. So that's what I'm doing in school. I go to the Medical University of South Carolina, and I'll finish in May of 2022, so not too much longer. The second part of your question was, how do I make it all work? So I have a really great partner. His name is Fred. He's also an entrepreneur. Okay. He planted the seed of entrepreneurship before I went to startups, but I wasn't quite ready to listen then, as I was once I went to healthcare startups. But we have found a way to make it work. You know, part of his reasoning for being an entrepreneurship is so that we would have this balanced family life. So us working together, we balance our schedules, we take time off. Like, we just find a way to make it work. Cause that's what I tell people, like, I didn't go into entrepreneurship to work 24/7. And you'll see, like, a lot of people putting it out there. Yeah, you know, I was up late at night, or you'll see entrepreneurs who say, yeah, I get up at 4 or 5. I don't get up at no 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. I just can't. And that's not why I wanted to be an entrepreneur. Like, I wanted to have control over my schedule, not work 60 hours a week. That's what I was leaving. And so we found a way to make it work here. And then, like, I have a supportive family, maintaining boundaries. So one of the things that I love about consulting is that you can pick the size of the project you take on and your boundaries around that. So I have a large project, a large consulting contract that I work on, but I have put the boundary there that I am only available to you all Monday through Wednesday. I don't do any other time for them unless it's agreed upon or something like that. But to maintaining those boundaries is a lot easier in consulting than it was when I worked for a corporation.
Gotcha. So you mentioned you're able to balance very well, you know, the entrepreneurship, your studies as a doctoral student, and raising your children. Are there any tools or scheduling or things that you use that work well to keep your household, you know, functioning well? Like, do you meal prep? Do you have certain time to exercise? Or, like, how do you, are there tools you use just to kind of make your life flow well and not be so stressful?
So there's a lot more tools that I use in the business than I use in, like, the family life. The scheduling is the biggest thing that we use in the family life. And it's not so much a tool. I don't meal prep. I have done it before. It's just, I'm not good at it. I've tried it. Kudos to the people that can do it. Like, I don't like planning out my meals. I like deciding the day of what it is I want to eat. But what we do is balance our schedule. So, like, when you mentioned working out, Fred gets up and he works out first. And then he takes True to school, which then allows me to work out next. And then by the time I'm done working out, he's back and we can start our day. We balance who's cooking. So if one person is cooking, the other person is giving out the baths and checking homework. So we found a way to make sure that our schedules are always in line with each other. So that's the tools that we use for at home. Well, I don't want to say tools, but like the system that we have in place at home. Totally different, a lot more tools for work.
Gotcha. Okay, we forgot to say, tell us about your children, their ages, their names. I forgot to ask you that question.
Yeah, so I have two. I have Lee, who just turned 13, so we're going through the teenage years now in the 8th grade, which is very different than the almost four going on 40-year-old daughter that I have named True Love. And so, like, yeah, she's 4. She is a ball of energy, whereas my son is real cool, calm, and collected. So they keep it interesting around here.
I bet so. So let's talk a little about you personally. We talked about the business side and the entrepreneur side, and we're going to talk more just about Deann the person. So one thing that I know you spend a lot of time doing is that you are an avid reader. So kind of tell us what led to you think your love of reading and maybe share some of the books that you're reading now, or maybe some of your favorites.
Okay, so love of reading. I think, education was so important from my parents. They grew up in the segregated South. It was a luxury to be able to go to school, to be able to get your degree. And so when we came along, that was just the standard that was set. Like, you go to school, you do your work, like you're supposed to. You don't have to worry. They made it, thankfully, very blessed that they made it so we didn't have to really worry about anything else. Our only worry was going to school and getting good grades. So that was, I think put in place from a very young age. My dad read a lot. He, very lots of memories of him coming in and reading having a newspaper always there. My mom is always reading the Bible. And so someone was always reading something. And so I think that's where it came from. Even both of my sisters, like I have two older sisters, all of us love to read. And we have instilled that in our kids as well. So we're just a family of readers. I was telling Fred, I've got to have a library in my next house. Like, the books are getting out of control at this point. There's so many of them. I just love to read, and I'll read any and everything. I try to balance, for like the last year, I've been trying to balance nonfiction and fiction. So each month I'll get a fiction book and I'll get a nonfiction book. I've been trying to keep up with that. I will say that since August, since I'm in my last year of my doctoral program, I'm doing a lot of reading, and most of it is research articles. So I've been doing more audibles, which is different. Not sure if I like it.
What's your favorite book or your favorite author, though, period?
Oh, man, you're going to stop me now. I'm trying to, I read so many books. I'll tell you what, nonfiction book, the book that I'm reading right now is The Consulting Bible. So I'm reading that, and that is actually one that I give to every participant who's in my consulting coaching program, because it just has a lot of information on how you should think about consulting, how to grow your consulting business. So it's called The Consulting Bible. So that's my favorite nonfiction book. Fiction, I don't know. I might have to come back to you on that one. I'm having a brain stump right now when it comes to my book, my favorite book.
Okay. So let's move on to some other questions. I am a huge Today Show fanatic, and I love the rapid fire interview fun questions that they often do on their format. So I'll ask a few of those before we wrap up. Okay. Tell us, a lot of us during the pandemic picked up some guilty pleasures. Like, what have been some of your guilty pleasures, or just things you may have picked up and started doing during the pandemic? For some people, it was exercise. Some people, it was Netflix and chill. Some people, came out of the pandemic, or as we still navigate, with business ideas or career changes. Like, what has the COVID-19 pandemic, brought you? And it could be, your favorite ice cream or favorite cookies, or just share with us, what it's been like for you.
So I think definitely the business. So scaling up the business came out of COVID. That was, okay, we're really going to do this. And the coaching program came out of COVID, because I saw so many people within healthcare overworked, burnt out, tired, nurses who've been doing all of these nursing contracts, and they just want to do something different. And so out of that becoming the Consulting Connect program, because I just wanted to show people how they could get into consulting, even if they didn't want to leave their regular job, as an additional stream of income. So that came out of COVID, and the experience that healthcare workers are having right now. In addition to that, on the fun side, I think TV. So like the Netflix and chill, like I binge watch series now. I don't really want to watch series in live time anymore. I like to wait until they're on like Netflix or Hulu, and then I just binge them. Like it's ridiculous. I'll stay up to like 5 o'clock in the morning knowing I gotta get up like in 2 hours trying to finish the series. So that definitely, you know, my TV watching went up a lot in COVID.
And when you're not studying and you're not working, like, what do you enjoy doing most in your free time? I know we talked about reading, but besides reading, what are other things you like to do in your free time?
So in my free time, reading. I used to love, it really sucks because of COVID, because we used to go to the movies all the time. So, you know, Fred and I would go to the movies. We would go to the movies with the kids. I really hate right now that I have not been able to give True the movie theater experience, because I know they've opened up back now, but we just still haven't gone. I hate doing that because we were such a movie family. So we do that. A lot of my weekends is spent, you know, finding fun things to do with the family. I am a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. So when there are events, then I may do that. My partner Fred is also an entrepreneur who has event planning and clothing brand. So whenever he has events, we're supporting that. And, spending time with my mom. My mom is 82 now. And so I try to spend just as much time with her as I can in her, you know, her later years. So it's fun now. I think all of us go through this, but it wasn't as fun when I was younger as it is now. Like, I really appreciate the time I get to spend with her. So I do that a lot too.
That's wonderful. And as you are quickly approaching a milestone birthday of 40, like, what are you looking forward to in this next decade?
So what am I looking forward to? I am looking forward to building a legacy. So I think I've pretty much built this legacy for my kids. I am now working on the legacy for my grandkids and my grandkids' kids. So putting things in place so that they're set up for success as well.
So Deann, I know we're in the South and it's still a little warm, but it is fall and the temperatures are dropping. We're pulling those boots out and those light sweaters. So let's do a quick fall rapid fire with you to see what some of your favorite fall items are. So here we go. And this is called This or That, the Fall Edition. Hot chocolate or hot cider?
Hot chocolate.
Soup or chili?
Soup.
Really? What kind of soup? Any
Vegetable
kind?
soup.
Vegetable soup?
Vegetable soup with some hamburger meat in it.
Okay, got it. Pumpkin pie or apple pie?
Neither, because I don't like pie, but definitely apple. I can't stand pumpkin, and I hate that everybody talks about it.
You know, there's like a pumpkin spice like for everything now.
Yes.
Sweaters or flannels?
Sweaters.
Pumpkin patch or apple orchard?
Now, so this would be pumpkin patch, only because the kids love it.
Okay. Halloween or Thanksgiving?
Thanksgiving.
What do you love about Thanksgiving over Halloween?
Oh, it's right around my birthday. So I just always tell people I know you're really celebrating my birthday, not Thanksgiving.
Vanilla candle or cinnamon candle?
Vanilla.
Vanilla, really? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that concludes the This or That Fall Edition, and that concludes this inaugural recording of the Healthcare Connector with Deann Butler, owner of Connected Consultants. And I will turn it over to you. Thank you for sharing today.
Thank you all for joining us. We'll be back for another episode of the Healthcare Connector on all of your podcasting platforms. See you later. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Healthcare Connector. If you enjoyed this podcast, please make sure to like and subscribe using your favorite podcast app. See you next time.